Do you like your romance novels with hate, revenge, tragedy, and about 3 pages of romance? Then you should read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And one question before we get to the review. Mrs. Captain, did you enjoy this read?
Not particularly, no.
There you have it. Hey guys and gals, welcome to Whiskey and Literature. I'm your host, Captain Mike, and I'm reading and reviewing 52 books in 52 weeks in 2023. This is my 36th book review of the year so far, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And I'm excited about this review for 2 reasons. First of all, I think the book was okay, if not good. And I'm also welcoming back to the channel, Mrs. Captain. Welcome to Whiskey and Literature.
Thank you for having me back.
I'm glad to have you. You've done a couple whiskey and kind of the channel related videos. This is your first book review. Again, when I began the channel, it was just gonna be me doing reviews, and then the kids and Max, and we have other people doing guest reviews. And about halfway through, I'm like, why don't you pick a book and come on? And you chose?
I chose Wuthering Heights because I'd heard it was good. I think maybe, might have been our daughter who said she'd read it. She did. She said she read it and she liked it, and so I was like, okay, well, I'll choose that one.
Okay.
So I did.
I mean, there were not many books left that I think that you would have chosen.
Right. I remember I was choosing between this and Huckleberry Finn.
Yes.
And then
someone else took that one.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, someone else. Someone else took
yeah.
One. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, would you consider yourself a reader?
I would now. I am not a lifelong reader like you. I really didn't start reading until my adult years. After we got married, I started reading more because I found a genre that I enjoyed. That was the key. As a kid, I remember going to the library with my mom, and she would try and pick me out a book, and it just never happened.
Your mom's an avid reader.
My mom is an avid reader. I grew up watching her devour books. And she tried to get me to enjoy reading, and it took a long time.
Yeah, I think, again, reading is like whiskey, and people tell me, oh, I don't like whiskey. I'm like, well, you just haven't found the right whiskey for you. Same thing for reading. Plenty of guys I've talked to who don't like to read, or they're reading for the first time as an adult, like an older adult, because they finally found something that they want to read. Whether you think there's a book or not for you, there is. For every kind of person, there is that kind of book. And there's also a whiskey for you too.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. No, I've actually been impressed. I think you're doing a great job. I think you read a lot. Obviously, I'm reading more than you this year. So do you have a favorite genre or an author? What do you think?
Definitely my genre right now is psychological thrillers.
Okay, yes.
They are, I don't know, I like the suspense. I like a twist and turn in the plot. You think you figure it out and then you don't.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. But I have read some historical fiction that I really enjoy. That has been a surprise to me sometimes, to have a friend recommend a book. I've joined some, not out here in Florida, I haven't found a book club, but in other places that we've lived, I've gotten in with some book clubs because I didn't know what to read. And so I take recommendations from people.
Yeah, I think that's a great way too. I love to recommend books to people. I've had guys tell me, nah, didn't like that one. And I've had guys who like The Wheel of Time and other ones.
Right.
It's been a great thing. So I think reading is great. I think if you look at a kid who reads, I think everything in school just comes easier because that reading comprehension makes all the subject. Anyway, I go on and on about why you should be reading books. And it's been a lifelong thing for me. I mean, I've read Dune. I remember reading the Dragonlance Chronicles and Sword of Shannara, and the David Eddings, whatever his series was, fantasy. It's been my lifelong love and science fiction. But I like whiskey. I don't just drink bourbon. I drink Scotch, and I drink Irish whiskeys and rye, and if you force me, I'll drink a Canadian. And same thing with books. I like science fiction, fantasy. Apparently I like romance novels. I read fiction, nonfiction, whatever, as long as it's a good book or I can learn something or take something from it, I'm down for that. But what we're going to do here, we're going to go through Wuthering Heights. We're going to talk about the author first, Emily Bronte, and then we'll go specs and stats, kind of about the style of the book. Then we're going to go through the characters and plot kind of at the same time, and then just share some of the thoughts that how we feel about the book overall. I have a star rating. I think you have a star rating, and that's going to be it, guys. So first of all, Emily Bronte.
Okay.
So my first reading about the Bronte sisters was Charlotte with Jane Eyre. I thought their story was fascinating. And Emily, she was born in 1818, died in 1848. Just like, I feel like half the authors on my shelf this year died of tuberculosis. I mean, you could almost just say if they were before 1900, they died of tuberculosis. She was the second youngest of the Bronte sisters. Yep. I think all of them, it sounded to me like they were all like relatively frail. Like they weren't robust, healthy people. And I think it might be part of the time. You know, there was a lot of typhoid fever and tuberculosis and all these diseases going on back then. They just didn't know what to do in some respects. And nutrition was an issue, and they were not very robust. I don't feel like she was very small, petite, not very outgoing. I felt like she didn't give two craps about anybody except her family. Yep. She went to school with Charlotte at the girls' school for a little bit, and then they had typhoid fever coming on or something, and so they all just ran back home. And so really no formal education, just a love of reading from her dad, I believe. And then it's just, I think their family group, and we talk about the Bronte sisters, and there was boys in there too. And I think that whole group had such a fertile soil and ground for this imagination that they had. I think it was, that's really all they had.
Well, yeah, they just had each other.
Yeah.
And to pass the time, they imagined and told stories and had all,
short stories. They had their own like a family magazine and poems. Yeah. Now, Emily Bronte could be considered like J.D. Salinger and Harper Lee, a one-hit wonder. This is the only novel that she ever produced. She did plenty of short stories and poems, but of her novels, this is the only one that came out. Yep. So any more thoughts about Emily Bronte? I mean...
No,
She died young, she was 30.
Honestly, reading about her and reading her book, and then realizing that she had no formal education, that it was just what she learned at home and what her and her sisters did. I'm like, man, she wrote a book. Like, that's pretty impressive to me. Like, I just think of what she could have accomplished. Anyway, yes, I was very impressed with.
Yeah, I think they were all amazing, and I really enjoyed their story and their background. So that's great.
Okay.
Specs and stats for the book was published in 1847. It was posthumously edited by Charlotte. And I'm pretty sure that this edition that I have here is the Charlotte edited edition. I don't know if that original 1947 version is even offered anywhere, because I did listen to this on Audible as well, and I'm pretty sure that's also the same. I'm not sure if it's
get
published.
The original one.
Yeah, I'm not sure someone's got it, but if you go to the store and buy Wuthering Heights, I think you have the 1950 edit of that book. And Charlotte says that she edited it for grammar and...
Okay. I was just going to ask you, do you know what was changed?
Grammar and, the character Joseph?
Yes.
His speech pattern?
Yes.
His dialect. Charlotte edited so that was more easily understood.
Okay.
Which is crazy because it's still
very...
So, did you listen to the book 100%?
I started reading it. I wanted to try, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
I read maybe a chapter.
Okay.
And then I went to Audible, and I was like, okay, I can follow it easier because the language was so... I've not read this era.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't flow like I'm used to, and I needed to stick with it.
I do feel like that Joseph's language was easier to listen to than to read.
Right.
Like when I was reading this and I would come to Joseph speaking, I was really struggled to understand what he was trying to say. And I struggled when I was listening as well, but it was more easily understood. Yes. than reading.
For sure.
So
it reminded me of Huckleberry Finn.
Yes.
I could not, and that's one of his books this year that I did read, but I had to listen to that one too because the language was just so.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
The Audible version is 12 hours and 32 minutes long. So do you listen to a lot of audiobooks?
I just started the last couple of years. I always thought that I would be, my mind would wander in books.
It's easy. It's easy.
It is easy. So I know what I can and can't do when I'm listening to a book. I can go around the house and do housework or go for a walk, and that's probably when I first started listening to more podcasts, and people are always talking about them, and I realized, I can do this. So I usually have a book on Audible that I'm listening to, one that I'm reading, usually one on my Kindle, and then a book. So I usually have maybe 3 books now going.
I'm a fan of Audible, and if it weren't for Audible, I would not be able to get through 52 books in 52 weeks this year. I almost strictly just listen to Audible when I'm driving to work and I'm walking. And like what you're saying, I do find myself listening to the same chapter over again because I realize I've been thinking about something else, and so I just go back and I listen to the same chapter. I mean, the first 3 chapters of Jane Eyre, I probably listened to 5 times before I kept going.
You told me that, yeah.
It might be because I liked Danny Newton's voice, but anyway.
Probably.
And I thought that beginning of that story was amazing. Yeah. So, any more about the specs and stats? Oh, this book. How many pages?
Did you read?
I read about half the book on the book, and I listened to about half of it. It's about 290 pages long. I bought this at the Goodwill bookstore for $3. It's a great deal. I bought about 17 of my books, which is about a third of the books I'm reading this year from the Goodwill bookstore. Saved a bunch of money doing it that way. Okay, so talk about this style of Wuthering Heights briefly.
Okay.
It's a frame story, which is a concept that I really learned this year.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one was the first one that was considered a frame story. But we have Lockwood comes in initially, and he's leasing Thrushcross Grange, and he meets the characters at Wuthering Heights, and then he goes back to his place, and he is talking to Nellie, and he has Nellie tell him the story, and so she kicks back 30 years to the beginning and brings him all the way up to the present. So their frame story is Lockwood being told basically the history of the families and Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange.
And speaking of the frame story, like the beginning of this book, I was so lost. Like I had no idea what was going on. I was like, okay, Lockwood, like what is he? Like I probably listened to the first of it a couple times just because.
Well, I remember a couple times I would be, because you read it before I did, and I'd be listening to it or reading it, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And you're just laughing at me.
I was like, yep, I know.
Yeah.
So
I do find the frame story concept as a pretty good storytelling device. 1001 Arabian Nights, I think, was a perfect frame story. What a nice device and so well done. And so I find myself enjoying that style. The book genres is like gothic, tragedy.
I would not call this
revenge, romance. It's in there. Let's just put it in there. And our thoughts. Okay. You can argue whether you think it's a romance book or not.
Okay.
Because there's probably 3 pages of romance in there.
All right, if you say so. I don't know.
Okay. And so with the frame story, we have Nellie narrating the story.
Yes.
So whenever you have the characters narrating the story, there's a bit of, they refer to it as being an unreliable narrator. In other words, so she's imposing her biases on the story.
It's her history.
It's
kind of her journal.
In a sense, it's her journal, and so she's telling the story to them, to Lockwood, and so there is some of that in there, which I think is an interesting concept. I never really thought about that, but quite a few of these books are told in that format, and it's not something I really thought about. I mean, if you read science fiction, you're reading Dune or The Wheel of Time, you're not worried about the story. You're not worried about the narration of the story, but.
And maybe this comes from, I mean, they grew up in a family circle where they told stories. Like that is what they did. You know, they told each other stories. They made up stories. They, and you think about really before TV, there was radio, and that was storytelling.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why this frame
kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I do like that. Yeah. I mean, certainly the idea of the solitary reader is a relatively new thing.
Yeah.
Certainly within the history of time. The idea of sitting, in your couch and reading a book is not something that people did, very far into the past.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even until, a couple hundred years ago that we even really had books.
Right.
So, maybe you had one book in the county, and that was in the Bible, and the parish priest had that one. So,
okay.
All right. So now we're on to the meat of the story, and I know it's 2023, and this is YouTube, so I should be doing this graphically, and I'm breaking out
the whiteboard.
the whiteboard, simply because if I was going to do this with graphics, it would take me a long time. I was thinking I was trying to write this on my tablet and screen record.
Okay.
And it wasn't working.
This is okay.
Yeah.
I like this.
Okay, and I do have another. Okay, so let's go through the characters and the plot at the same time using this dry erase board. So I'm going to be looking at the board as I'm talking to you guys. So the overarching frame story, we have Lockwood being told a story by Nellie. So that's the frame. And Nellie's she goes back 30 years in time to the story of two families at Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. We have the Earnshaws and the Lintons. And the names of the parents, we don't care. So Mr. Earnshaw, he goes to London and on a business trip or something, and he comes back home and he just brings a boy home.
Brings a kid.
We'll just do an H right here. So this is Heathcliff. Heathcliff.
Yes.
So Mr. Earnshaw brings this orphan boy home, says to his wife, we're going to take care of this boy. And so they have two kids already, Henley and Catherine. And Mr. Earnshaw, for some reason, seems to like Heathcliff more than his own kids. Mm-hmm. And you can just imagine how that goes over. So Henley and Catherine, well, I'm not gonna say Catherine doesn't really like Heathcliff. She doesn't treat him very well.
Right.
And Henley definitely, you could say, hates
him.
Heathcliff.
Oh, for sure.
And I think Catherine likes Heathcliff, but she's just that usual teenage bratty girl and treats him like crapola.
I think she sees that she could like him, but then she's like...
some of that might just be in rebellion against her parents.
Right.
And are the usual convention of those around her.
Yeah.
Okay, so Earnshaws, Heathcliff, Henley, Catherine. At Thrushcross Grange, we have the Lintons, and they have also two kids, Edgar and Isabella. And Edgar also doesn't like Heathcliff, and with Henley, they make fun of Heathcliff and give him a really hard time.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens? Let's see. So Henley goes away to college.
Yep.
Okay, and then the Earnshaws, they die.
They do.
I think it's just that quick. Earnshaws, they're dead. So Henley comes back to Wuthering Heights to be the master. And he brings his wife, Frances.
Yep.
And they make a little baby, Harrington. I always want to say Harrington, but Harrington. So Frances and Henley make Harrington, and then Frances, she dies.
Yeah.
All
the women died
all the women died.
Yeah.
Which also, if you think about Emily Bronte's life.
It's true, because her mom died when she was young.
Yes, yeah.
So,
yeah, okay.
unlike today's day and age where the women outlive the men, I think.
Yeah.
Well.
Not back then.
Not back then.
Okay, so Earnshaw's dead, Frances is dead, Henley's the master. So Heathcliff gets treated like
a servant.
Basically a servant. I'm not going to say slave. Servant, I think, is a good word. He still has a thing for Catherine, and Catherine kind of has a thing for him. Secretly. Yeah, because Edgar and Catherine are it's assumed that they're going to get married.
Yep.
Catherine and Edgar get engaged, and Heathcliff, he runs away.
Yep, because he's heartbroken.
He's heartbroken. So Heathcliff, he's gone.
Yep.
So then Catherine and Edgar get married, and then the Lintons, they die. And this might or might not be an exactly sequence, but
yeah, I can't remember.
Earnshaw's are dead, Lintons are dead, Francis is dead, Heathcliff's gone, Hindley's the master of Wuthering Heights, Catherine and Edgar live at Thrushcross Grange, Edgar's the master there, he has his sister Isabella there, and we have Hareton is Hindley's son with his dead wife. So 3 years later, Heathcliff comes back.
Okay, good job remembering that. Years.
Yes.
I didn't remember
3
that.
years.
Okay.
I don't know why it sticks out. And he's like some kind of wealthy merchant guy.
Yes, he like grew up and got a little sophisticated or something.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
Got some money.
Got some money, came back, seemed like a, big, handsome guy,
Yep.
whatever. So actually I put him over there, but he's actually living at
Yes.
Wuthering Heights.
Yep.
And Hindley likes to drink
Oh, yes.
whiskey.
I think so.
The spirits
He's
or
pretty much a drunk.
Yeah, so Hindley's a drunk.
After his
and
wife died. Wasn't that what it was? After his wife died?
After Francis died in Hareton, yes.
Yes.
Heathcliff and Hindley, they gamble,
Okay.
and Hindley basically ends up mortgaging Wuthering Heights
That's right.
to Heathcliff. Yes.
Yep. I forgot about that. I read this a while ago.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. So then Catherine, so Heathcliff is still trying to secretly woo Catherine, even though she's married, and Edgar finally is like, dude, don't come to my house anymore.
Yep.
I'm kind of married to Catherine
her.
already.
Yep.
And then she gets pregnant, and
Which was weird. I didn't even realize she was pregnant.
wait, was Isabella before or after?
No, Isabella married Heathcliff.
Yes. Yes, okay.
And
So,
then she was unhappy.
yeah, okay, so Heathcliff comes back. He's still trying to woo Catherine away from Edgar.
Right.
Heathcliff finds out Isabella thinks he's hot.
Yes,
So Heathcliff marries Isabella. They elope.
they do. They ran away because someone was not happy.
Yeah. Well, she realizes who Heathcliff really is.
Right.
Well, they elope. Then they come back, and then Isabella gets pregnant.
Yep.
And then she leaves.
Yes, because Heathcliff was
Yeah.
not nice. He's
Yes.
awful.
Yeah. So Heathcliff, he's over at Wuthering Heights. Isabella's gone. And he's trying to get Catherine back from Edgar. And then Catherine gets pregnant, and she has a baby, Kathy.
Yep.
And then she dies.
Yep. Like right after.
Yeah. So Edgar is now at Thrushcross Grange. He has Kathy.
Yep.
Heathcliff and, Hindley dies. So now Heathcliff is a master of Wuthering Heights.
Yep.
And he has Hareton, and Edgar and Kathy are at Thrushcross Grange.
Yep.
And then the words comes out that Isabella, she died.
She died.
And Linton came to Edgar.
Yep.
And then that same night, Heathcliff was like, sent Joseph to bring Linton.
Yeah, he's like,
and the next day, they relented, and Linton came to live with Heathcliff.
His dad. Yep.
So now Linton's over here. Okay.
It's a soap opera.
Yeah, no, really it is. So then Heathcliff is trying to get Linton together with Kathy. That's why I had Linton over here. Now I should put him back over here, I guess. So he's trying everything he can to get Kathy and Linton together.
Yep.
That way he can be master of everything. Or his lineage can have everything. Basically he does. And I mean, but literally by force.
Oh yeah, he's awful.
He is awful. And he basically locks Kathy away. She's locked away for like a
long time.
Well, no, that was Nellie. Nellie was guarding Kathy.
That's right.
Nellie gets locked away, and then Heathcliff forces Kathy and Linton to get married. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then Linton dies.
Because he was not well.
He was frail.
He was very frail his whole life.
So he's gone. So now we're back up to when Lockwood comes to Thrushcross Grange.
Yep.
So at Wuthering Heights, we have Heathcliff, we have Kathy, we have Harrington, and Linton's dead.
Yep.
So these three are left.
All unhappy.
All unhappy. Lockwood rents Thrushcross Grange. Nellie tells him this whole story, and then basically he's like, you know what? I don't actually like living out here in the woods.
Yep.
Like this is in the moors, and this is not my scene. And so he's like, I'm out of here. And Heathcliff's like, that's fine, but you still have to pay your rent. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna pay my rent. No big deal. So he basically leaves. Okay, so we have, again, Heathcliff, Harrington, and Kathy. Edgar's dead too. Dead.
Yep.
So Lockwood's like, I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to live in the moors. I need the city. And he's not really an awesome character either. He's not really in there very often.
No, it's not actually much about him.
No. So he leaves, and then he comes back after 8 months. He's gone for 8 months, and he's nearby. He's just traveling somewhere. He's like, oh, I'm nearby Thrushcross Grange. I should go visit and see what's happening. So he goes by, and he finds that Heathcliff essentially starved himself to death.
He did. He just gave up.
Yeah, I think he was thinking he kept seeing the ghost of Catherine.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't let him eat. And he basically starved himself to death.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I gathered from the story. That he was wanting to, and she just would not allow him to eat because she kept just because remember that first time it started happening, they were at the table.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like he was haunted by her even when she was alive. Like just he was
obsessed.
He was obsessed with her.
Yeah.
So it was his ruin.
Yeah. Definitely.
But.
So he's dead, and Lockwood finds Nellie, and she tells him that Harrington and Kathy are married, and they love each other. She's teaching him how to read, and remember, he kind of spies on them, and he doesn't want to interrupt their bliss,
right?
Because he was under the impression a while ago when he came and visited, he's like, if I turn the charm on, Kathy will be mine.
Yep.
And he's like, well, I'm glad I didn't turn the charm on because she seems very happy in this place that she's in now.
Yep.
So he comes, he visits, doesn't expose himself to these two who are now married and supposedly happy.
Yep.
And Nellie tells him that, and he just sneaks out the back and goes away. And that's the end of the story. And those were the 3 pages of romance in this novel. And
those were like...
Yeah, it was really nothing.
Whatever.
I mean, they were making out, and then they come in, and they were being all goo goo gaga, and that's totally fine. Okay, that was the plot. That was kind of laborious, and I keep going back and forth on these reviews, and I've been doing less and less of the plot and the characters. I just kind of, because there's an assumption, I think, that you either know the story, you don't want to know the entire story.
Right.
You're more interested in what do I think about the story, about what happened, how would I feel about it, and should you read the book as well?
Right.
So Laura, should anyone else ever read Wuthering Heights?
Oh gosh, when you put it that way, I don't want to be the one to say don't read it, but...
That's what we're here for. Stake a claim. Should people read this book or not? My
recommendation, I don't understand how some people love this book. Like there are people I hear that they love this book.
Come on, it's a romance, it's such a story.
There was no happy in this. Everybody was so unhappy, and they were mean to each other, and the men in this, I don't know, they were all not nice.
Okay, but you said that about every book from the 19th century that you've read.
Well, I like Jane Eyre. I did. I read Jane Eyre, and I enjoyed Jane Eyre because I felt it had a good mix of sad, and then there would be happy. And I mean, I cried, I laughed. It was hard times and good times, but I felt like it had, and there was romance.
Absolutely.
This, I was mad.
Now you do realize that Jane Eyre is number 10, and this book is 36, on the list. So if you're going from 50 to 1 of the greatest books.
Right.
So Jane Eyre would be 40 on the list.
Right.
And Wuthering Heights is 14.
I know.
So people think it's way better.
And I'm...
Now, here's something I will say. So I read Jane Eyre, and then I read Anna Karenina.
Right.
And
I did not read that one.
I enjoyed Jane Eyre more than I enjoyed Anna Karenina.
Okay.
But I recognize that Anna Karenina is a better story. Like, it's a better book. It's more technically better. It's more complex. There is an assumption sometimes that the more difficult a story is to understand, the better it is. Which can't be true.
No.
That's just flat out not true. But another example is David Copperfield and Great Expectations.
Okay.
Like, I enjoy David Copperfield far better than Great Expectations, though I recognize that Great Expectations is a better book than David Copperfield.
Okay.
Having said that, I think the ending of Jane Eyre was a little weak as far as the story goes.
Okay.
I feel like it didn't follow through at the end. I feel like Wuthering Heights was kind of true to itself the entire way through.
Yeah.
I felt like the ending of Jane Eyre was more kind of, I don't know, and the whole ex-wife and everything. That whole like, maybe
that was weird.
I get why people would say Wuthering Heights is a better book. Though if you're just reading for pure pleasure, Jane Eyre is a far better book.
And I'll take that. I mean, I read it, I finished it. I had to see how it ended. I was telling Captain Mike here that I only took like one note, like, because he told me to take notes as I read.
Yeah.
And I only made note of one thing, and it was towards the beginning of the book. I felt like it was about the only happy thing that stuck out to me.
Okay.
But it had to do with Nellie telling the story to Lockwood. She was feeling like she was taking up too much of his time, and that this story was going on too long, and she wanted to jump ahead 3 years. And he stopped her, and he said, no, you've got to you're doing a great job, and you've got to keep going at the consistency of that you're telling it. And he compared it to sitting and watching a mom cat clean her kitten. And he said, if you're watching a mom clean her kitten, and she's very meticulous about cleaning every part of her kitten, but then she would just leave off and not clean one ear. And I don't know why the example of it made me stop. I kind of laughed. I was like, well, that's weird, like analogy, but... So that's the only thing I took note of.
Okay.
Because everything else, I just thought everyone was awful to each other.
I agree with you, and I do remember that scene there.
Yeah.
What do you think of Nellie?
She's my favorite character in the whole book.
Do you think that she caused problems? Because as I was reading, and she would go and she would tell people things.
Yeah, intervened.
And she would intervene quite often. And I felt like some of the issues were her fault.
Okay, I could probably see that. I felt like she tried, in a way, like she liked everybody in her own way.
Yes.
Like she was the only kind person. Yes. Like everybody went to her. Like she was their confidant. I mean, I remember back when Catherine and Edgar were engaged, and Catherine was like, "Am I doing the right thing?" She went to Nellie.
Yeah, that's right.
And Nellie was kind of like, I think she could tell that there was something between Catherine and Heathcliff.
Oh, yeah.
Even before anyone else did.
Servants know everything.
Exactly. And she was there. She was a constant. She went from one house to the other when she was told. Yeah. She took care of, was it Hareton? When nobody else, he was a little...
Yeah.
Not nice little boy. But I mean, you think of his parents, so... Yeah. But she loved him. She tried to love him. Anyway.
So you would not put this in a romance category?
No way. No.
Revenge? Mm-hmm. Is that a genre of revenge? Tragedy? Tragedy would be...
Tragedy.
I mean, I think... Okay, I'll have to read this here. Okay. There's the idea that the child is the father of man. So, child is the father of man is an idiom from the poem My Heart Leaps Up by William Wordsworth. And one of the interpretations is that man is the product of habits and behavior developed in youth.
Yeah.
I feel like Heathcliff was created to be this monster and revenging himself on Hindley and Edgar.
Yeah.
and everybody
Everybody.
in the end.
Because he was mistreated.
And then he bestowed that same legacy on Harrington.
Yes.
He treated Harrington
did.
exactly the same way he
yeah.
was treated. Luckily, at least as far as we know, Harrington was able to break that cycle.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Because Kathy, she, you could tell from the beginning, Kathy had a good soul.
Yes.
She was the she was the best of her mom. Her mom was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
She was spunky. Catherine was, but yes, Kathy, she had heart.
Yeah, I agree, and that shows. I mean, she ended up with Harrington.
She did,
and,
and saw what he was lacking. Saw that he wasn't loved. He hadn't been loved. Hadn't been taught.
Yeah.
He always hung out with all these men were drunks and angry.
Yes. So, I mean, okay, Nellie, so you didn't like
No.
any other character. Who was your least favorite character? Heathcliff?
It's hard because I do, what you're saying is at the beginning I felt really bad for him.
Yeah.
I was like, it was kind of a Cinderella story, but backwards, Catherine and Henley were awful to him. But I mean, it's understandable.
But he didn't hit the fairy tale ending.
No, he didn't. So, I mean, it's all understanding, all these parents, and then they all died and left these kids to figure it out, and they hadn't really been loved. And the moms died early in all their lives, and there's something to be said about the love of a mother.
Yeah.
These children didn't have
Kathy definitely, she loved Edgar a
Yeah.
lot, her dad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a fierce love.
Yeah, for sure. But there was love missing.
So are you surprised at the popularity of Wuthering Heights?
I am.
So again, if you want to know the list that I'm reading, there is an algorithm was created which analyzed 130 of the greatest, or the 130 list of the greatest books of all time. And that algorithm looked into each one of those lists and used those lists to create the master list, if you will, of the greatest books of all time. And I'm reading the top 50 of that list. And so this is, like I said, number 14 or 15 on the list. Yeah. And I kind of agree with you. Like I feel like Anna Karenina was a better book. I think some of the books that I've read earlier this year that are kind of higher on the list, like they're lower on the list.
Right.
I feel like they should be higher than Wuthering Heights, but I get why it's on it. And so, I think part of it's just because how it was written and when it was written, and some of these books are just kind of groundbreaking and that's why.
Oh, okay.
It was the first of its kind.
Okay.
The first to try this style of writing. And of course, Emily Bronte, just like Charlotte Bronte, published the books anonymously and under a pseudonym originally. Yeah. And because, they were women authors, and which was done often quite a bit in those days. So, okay.
Okay.
Let's see, any other questions? Oh, so I have a crazy theory. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about back to the beginning. Earnshaw brings Heathcliff home.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So,
oh boy.
Yeah, do you see where this is going? This is my crazy theory. So Earnshaw, this guy, he goes to London quite often for business, and he's got a little girl there on the side, and he visits his girl and his boy, and then his mom, she died, and he's like, maybe Heathcliff wasn't actually an orphan.
Oh man.
He was Earnshaw's. Now they talk about Heathcliff being dark.
Yeah.
Like he's and
didn't look like them.
No, but what if the mom was an exotic beauty?
Yep, a forbidden love.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my crazy theory.
And that would explain why he loved him so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the whole I just
it's
picked
weird.
this orphan and brought him home.
Where'd this kid come from?
That seems odd to me. And then I like this orphan that I found better than my own children.
Kid. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. Heathcliff is a love child.
All right. Okay.
So he was trying so hard to be the master of Wuthering Heights, and he was.
Yeah, and maybe, Earnshaw knew that he wouldn't be accepted as, his child.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway. I kind of like that. Too bad you can't, ask if that was...
Yeah. And I haven't seen that posited anywhere. But I haven't really deep dived this on. Okay, so we've done pretty good recently without the camera overheating.
Yes.
But tonight,
guess we talked too much.
We talked too much. Camera overheated, so we kind of just had to reset things a little bit. And of course, we only had about a couple minutes left to do.
Yep.
So we're gonna get to the star rating now. So, I'm gonna give mine first.
Okay.
That was a question.
Oh, yes, give yours first.
Okay.
You do it more detailed.
Yes. Okay, so I give all the books, I rate them on 5 criteria, 6 if I listen to them on Audible, and let's go through them. So initial response, how did I feel when I first finished the book? And I gave it a 3. I just felt okay. Recommendation, how likely am I to recommend this book? Believe it or not, I'll also give it a 3. The style, did I enjoy the writing style? I like the frame story, I like the storytelling kind of story, it was nice. I gave it a 4. Plot structure, how engaged was I in the story? Whether I enjoyed the story necessarily or not, like I wanted to know what was going on, so I moved right along. I got a 4. Okay. Characters, were they relatable, believable, engaging? Not did you like the characters?
Right.
And man, I gave it a 4.
Yeah.
And Audible, for those books I listened to on Audible, how was the presentation or the production? And I give it a 3.
Okay.
It was okay. Just okay. Yeah.
All right.
So that's 21. And I feel like I'm giving all the books 3.5 stars these days. Anyway, that's 21. And 21 divided by 6 is 3.5. So 3.5 stars for Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And, you know, I gave a couple books recently, also 3.5 stars that I kind of liked better than this. But again, whether I liked it better or recognized the goodness or the greatness of the book is I'm recognizing now that it's okay to not like a book and recognize how good it is.
It's a good book.
So okay, my star rating is 3.5, and that's a pretty good rating for me.
Yeah,
honestly,
it is.
So what do you think?
I was looking at his the way he breaks it down and trying to think, okay, well, exactly where was I? And I feel like I could give it a 3. There was part of me that wanted to give it like a 2.75 or something, just because. But I mean, it doesn't matter that it's not a romance novel, and I was angry that the characters were not nice. I mean, that's just the fact of it. But I mean, I read it. I didn't thoroughly enjoy it. It brought up, I don't know, I was just angry that everyone was so mean to each other. So 3.
3.0.
Yeah.
That's legitimate.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It is.
It is what it is.
That's your score. So you're gonna put that on Goodreads?
You know, I should. Because I marked it down. I'm not sure if I rated it.
I need to go back because I do have a Goodreads profile and I have these books saved in my Goodreads and I need to
rate them.
Yeah, go give them a rating.
I always get nervous rating books.
What, you think someone's gonna?
No, I just, I have a hard time even recommending books to some people just because things I like, I know you may not like them, or
doesn't matter.
I know.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, well.
Yes.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for reading Wuthering Heights.
Yeah.
And
this was
sorry
different.
It wasn't super awesome book for you. Well, it wasn't an awesome book for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
But I recommended Frankenstein to him, and you thoroughly enjoyed that one.
I did thoroughly enjoy it.
So.
And going back to that again briefly here. Again, I'm reading 52 books in 52 weeks.
Right.
And some of the books I've not really enjoyed. Did I really enjoy this book? Not really. But I really recognize the books that I want to return to those books or to the authors, or which ones I want to avoid in the future.
Yeah.
And so I think whether or not you think it's awesome or not, it's great that you've read it. Mm-hmm. It just expands some of your your literary knowledge. Yeah. And so I think that's great.
Yep.
I mean, I've read plenty of books that I didn't really enjoy. Mm-hmm. And I usually persevere through them.
Yeah.
Just so I can say, I hated that book.
And this, there's so many people who like the time period that this was told in.
That's true.
So Like, I've not read Pride and Prejudice. I haven't.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think like George Eliot's Middlemarch,
Okay.
Anna Karenina, these books more thoroughly explore the time period.
Okay.
And you are more immersed in the time period and what is going on.
Okay.
You know, I don't really feel like Wuthering Heights had that level of detail where we get into, we're talking about the politics and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
This is more just about them. And it isn't that time period, but for
Right.
the most part, it was really separated from all that sort of stuff. So
Which makes sense because Emily Bronte was all about her family.
that's true.
That was
You're
her
right.
circle.
You're right.
She didn't get out. She didn't have friends.
You're right.
She
I mean,
didn't have a political stance.
Yeah. I mean, George Eliot and Leo Tolstoy, they were all very heavily involved in politics.
Okay.
And so that's a great reasoning. So.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, I think that's enough for one night.
I think so.
Guys, thanks for sticking with us. Again, Captain Mike. If you enjoyed the video, like it. It's free. Subscribe to see more of my content. I do both book and whiskey reviews. As I do my book reviews this year, you can find those links to those in the description below. But for now, I hope you're reading something good and drinking something great. Turn the pages, my friends, and stay thirsty. Cheers.